The narcissist didn't just steal your confidence, they stole your very sense of existing. Jean-Paul Sartre discovered that this isn't just psychological damage, it's an existential crisis that conventional therapy completely misses. By the end of this video, you'll have Sartre's exact method for rebuilding not just your life, but your authentic self from the ground up. Maybe you're staring at the mirror and don't recognize the person looking back at you. You see someone who looks tired, confused, almost ghost-like. Perhaps you're paralyzed by the simplest decisions. What to eat for breakfast feels like an insurmountable choice. Which route to take to work becomes a crisis. Even what TV show to watch turns into an existential dilemma. Or you might be asking yourself the most terrifying question of all. Who am I without them? You wake up in the morning and feel like you're living in someone else's body, wearing someone else's personality like an ill-fitting costume that you can't figure out how to remove. Friends ask what you want to do for fun, and you realize you have no idea what actually brings you joy. You stand in the grocery store staring at cereal boxes, unable to remember what you liked before they told you what to like. This isn't just your experience. Millions of people who've survived narcissistic abuse struggle with this exact same existential emptiness. You feel hollow, like a shell of a person going through the motions of living. You catch yourself asking permission to express opinions you're not even sure are yours. You second-guess every preference, every reaction, every instinct, because for so long, your authentic responses were wrong, dangerous, or simply irrelevant. Conventional therapy often focuses on healing trauma and building self-esteem, but it misses something crucial. The narcissist didn't just damage your confidence, they systematically erased your sense of authentic existence. They didn't just hurt you, they taught you to disappear yourself. Every time you had a genuine thought and they dismissed it, every time you expressed a real feeling and they invalidated it, every time you tried to assert your authentic self and they punished you for it, you learned that existing authentically was a luxury you couldn't afford. But what if I told you that Jean-Paul Sartre solved this exact problem over 80 years ago? His approach doesn't just help you recover who you were before the abuse, it gives you the power to create who you authentically are, perhaps for the first time in your life. Where psychology focuses on healing from what happened to you, existential philosophy focuses on consciously creating who you're becoming. And that's exactly what you need right now. Jean-Paul Sartre was a French existentialist philosopher who lived through some of humanity's darkest moments. During World War II, he was captured by Nazis and held as a prisoner of war for 9 months. But what made him revolutionary wasn't just surviving oppression. It was his insight into how human beings maintain their authentic existence, even under the most crushing circumstances. Imagine being stripped of everything that defined you, your freedom, your choices, your daily routines, even your name replaced by a number. This is exactly what happened to Sartre in that German prison camp. But instead of breaking him, this experience revealed something profound about human nature. He discovered that even when every external freedom is removed, there's one thing that can never be taken from you: your freedom to choose how you respond, who you become, and what meaning you create from your experience. In 1940s wartime Paris, after his release, Sartre observed something that directly applies to your situation. He saw how totalitarian systems don't just control people's actions, they attack people's sense of authentic selfhood. They force individuals into roles, scripts, and identities that aren't genuinely theirs. They make people complicit in their own erasure by convincing them that authentic existence is dangerous, selfish, or impossible. Sound familiar? This is exactly what happened to you in that relationship. Sartre developed what he called radical freedom. The idea that even in the most oppressive circumstances, human beings are fundamentally free to choose who they become. He saw that the greatest tragedy isn't external oppression, but what he called bad faith, when people surrender their authentic existence and live according to scripts written by others. When you become so afraid of the consequences of being real that you forget how to be real at all. Here's what's revolutionary about Sartre's discovery. He realized that most people live in bad faith, even without obvious oppression. They follow scripts written by parents, society, expectations, fears, never fully stepping into authentic existence. This means that the narcissistic relationship didn't just damage something that was previously healthy. It exploited and amplified patterns of inauthenticity that were already there. Today, we understand that narcissistic abuse operates exactly like the totalitarian systems Sartre studied. The narcissist becomes your personal dictator, slowly erasing your authentic self and replacing it with a version of you that serves their needs. They don't just want to control what you do, they want to control who you are. They want you to disappear yourself so completely that you become a perfect mirror for their fantasies. But here's what's revolutionary about Sartre's approach. He doesn't just help you understand what happened to you. He gives you the philosophical tools to reconstruct your authentic existence from the ground up. Modern psychology treats narcissistic abuse recovery as healing from trauma. Sartre's existentialism treats it as an opportunity for authentic self-creation. And that difference changes everything. Sartre's first revolutionary insight was understanding bad faith, the ways we abandon our authentic existence and live according to roles imposed by others. Now, I know this sounds academic, but imagine you're an actor who's been playing the same character for so long that you've forgotten you're acting. You wake up every day, put on the costume, deliver the lines, hit your marks, but somewhere along the way, you lost track of who you actually are underneath the performance. The narcissist didn't just manipulate you, they systematically trained you out of authentic existence. Every time you expressed a genuine preference and they reacted with rage, disappointment, or stone-cold withdrawal, you learned to suppress that authentic impulse. Every time you tried to set a boundary and they punished you with silent treatment, explosive anger, or emotional manipulation, you learned that your authentic self was not just unwelcome, it was dangerous. Let me give you some specific examples that might feel painfully familiar. Maybe you used to love certain types of music, but they mocked your taste so consistently that you stopped listening to what you enjoyed. Perhaps you had friends they didn't approve of, and slowly, through subtle criticism and overt hostility, you found yourself cutting ties with people who actually cared about you. Or maybe you had career dreams they deemed unrealistic, impractical, or threatening to their sense of superiority, so you gradually abandoned aspirations that once excited you. Over time, you developed what Sartre would call a false self, not because you're fake or dishonest, but because you learned to exist according to their script rather than your own authentic choices. You became who they needed you to be instead of who you genuinely are. You learned to anticipate their reactions before you spoke, to filter your thoughts through their approval system, to shrink yourself into a shape that wouldn't trigger their wrath. Here's what's particularly insidious about this process. Bad faith feels safe. When you're living according to someone else's script, you don't have to face the anxiety of authentic choice. The narcissist made all the decisions, set all the rules, determined all the values. In a twisted way, this relieved you of the burden of authentic existence. You didn't have to risk being wrong, being rejected, or being alone because you weren't really being anything at all. But here's the part that might shock you. Bad faith becomes addictive. After months or years of having someone else define your reality, make your choices, and determine your worth, the idea of authentic self-determination feels terrifying. You've become so practiced at disappearing yourself that existing authentically feels like a foreign language. You've forgotten how to speak. I know this is getting deep already. Let me give you a moment to process this. What Sartre discovered is profound, and it's going to challenge everything you thought you knew about recovery. Are you ready for the next revelation? But here's what Sartre understood that most people miss. Bad faith isn't just something that happened to you during the relationship. It's likely something you've been practicing your entire life. Maybe you learned early that being authentic was dangerous, perhaps from critical parents, impossible standards, or childhood experiences that taught you to hide your real self for safety. The narcissist didn't create your capacity for bad faith. They exploited it with surgical precision. They found the places where you were already hiding from authentic existence and convinced you to hide even deeper. And recognizing this isn't about self-blame. It's about understanding that you have more power than you realize, because the patterns that made you vulnerable are the same patterns you can now consciously choose to change. This brings us to Sartre's most challenging and liberating concept: radical freedom. He famously wrote, "Man is condemned to be free." Now, I know that sounds like a contradiction. How can freedom be a condemnation? But this paradox holds the key to your reconstruction. Imagine you're a prisoner who's spent years in a cell following the prison routine, eating prison food, wearing prison clothes, living by prison rules. The routine is predictable, safe, and requires no decisions from you. One day, you discover that your cell door was never actually locked. You could have left at any time. Suddenly, the safety of prison routine becomes terrifying, because now every moment you stay is a choice you're making. Every meal you eat, every rule you follow, every day you spend in that cell is no longer happening to you. It's something you're actively choosing. This is exactly what's happening to you right now. The narcissistic relationship was your prison, but the prison door is open. Every moment you spend trapped in old patterns, every day you live according to their lingering script, every choice you make based on fear rather than authenticity. These are all choices you're making. Here's a concrete example that might hit close to home. Maybe you still arrange your living space the way they preferred it, not because you like it that way, but because changing it feels wrong or scary. Or perhaps you still avoid activities they disapproved of, even though they're no longer in your life to object. You might catch yourself ordering their favorite coffee instead of exploring what you actually prefer, or avoiding friendships with people they wouldn't have liked. Here's what makes this revelation both terrifying and liberating. You are radically free to choose who you become, starting right now. Not free to become who you were before the abuse. That person may have been living in bad faith too. You're free to create an authentic existence, perhaps for the first time in your life. But let's be honest about what this means. It means that your continued suffering is partially a choice you're making. I'm not saying the abuse was your fault, that's victim-blaming nonsense. But right now, in this moment, continuing to live according to their script, continuing to make choices based on their preferences, continuing to hide from authentic existence, these are choices you have the power to change. Okay, I need you to stay with me here, because what I'm about to share might be difficult to accept, but it's the key to your freedom. The anxiety you feel when faced with choices isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's the natural response to authentic freedom. Sartre called this anguish, the dizzying realization that you are completely responsible for creating yourself. The narcissist protected you from this anguish by making all your choices for you. They decided what you should want, who you should be, how you should respond to everything. Now that protection is gone, and you're face to face with radical freedom. Think about the last time you had to make a decision completely on your own. Maybe where to live, what job to take, or even something as simple as how to spend a free weekend. Notice how overwhelming it felt. That overwhelm isn't pathology. It's the sensation of authentic freedom after years of having your choices made for you. Most recovery approaches try to eliminate this anxiety. They want you to feel confident and sure of yourself again. Sartre's method embraces it. That anxiety is proof that you're becoming authentic. It's the sensation of true freedom. And it's supposed to feel unsettling because you're taking responsibility for creating yourself. Now we come to Sartre's most practical insight. Existence precedes essence. This philosophical phrase means you don't have a predetermined nature or authentic self waiting to be discovered. Instead, you create who you are through the choices you make and the actions you take. Think of yourself as a sculptor starting with a block of marble. The narcissist convinced you that the sculpture was already predetermined, that you had a fixed nature, specific limitations, a set personality that couldn't be changed. They told you that you were too sensitive, too demanding, too much, or conversely, not enough, of various qualities. But that's not true. You're both the sculptor and the marble. Every authentic choice you make is another chisel strike, revealing the person you're creating yourself to be. Here's what's revolutionary about this approach. You're not trying to find yourself or get back to who you really are. You're creating yourself, moment by moment, choice by choice. This means that everything the narcissist told you about your limitations, your nature, your capabilities, none of that matters. Those were descriptions of the person you were when you were living in bad faith. They have nothing to do with who you can choose to become. Let me give you some concrete examples of what this looks like in practice. Maybe the narcissist convinced you that you're not a social person because they monopolized your social energy and isolated you from others. That doesn't mean you're inherently introverted or socially awkward. It means you learn to behave that way under specific circumstances. You can choose to explore social connection differently now. Or perhaps they labeled you as oversensitive when you reacted to their cruelty. That doesn't mean you're fundamentally flawed for having emotional responses. It means you are responding normally to abnormal treatment. You can choose to honor your sensitivity as a strength rather than apologizing for it as a weakness. But here's the key. Authentic choice isn't about making perfect decisions or having complete self-knowledge. It's about making choices that come from your genuine preferences and values rather than from scripts imposed by others. It's about learning to trust your own judgment again, even when that judgment feels uncertain or unfamiliar. This next part explains the most transformative aspect of Sartre's method. Take a deep breath because understanding this will change everything. Let me give you a practical example that you can try right now. As you're watching this video, notice how you're sitting. Are you sitting the way you're most comfortable, or are you sitting the way you think you should sit? Are you giving this video your full attention because the ideas genuinely interest you, or because you feel like someone on a healing journey is supposed to consume educational content? There's no right answer here. The point is becoming conscious of the difference between choices that come from authentic desire and choices that come from internalized scripts. Maybe you're watching this video because you're genuinely curious about Sartre's philosophy. Maybe you're watching because you think you should be working on yourself. Maybe it's both. The goal isn't to judge these motivations, but to become aware of them. Every time you choose authentically, even in the smallest matters, you're practicing the skill that will reconstruct your entire existence. Every time you eat something because you want it, rather than because it's what you should want. Every time you speak up because you have something to say, rather than staying silent because it's safer. Every time you pursue an activity because it brings you joy, rather than because it looks good to others. You're building your capacity for authentic existence. This brings us to Sartre's final crucial concept, the project of self. He believed that authentic human existence is essentially a project, an ongoing creative endeavor where you consciously design and build the person you're becoming. Imagine you're an architect who's been hired to design someone else's dream house for years. You've become incredibly skilled at reading their preferences, anticipating their needs, creating spaces that make them happy. You know exactly what materials they like, what colors they prefer, how they want the light to fall in their favorite room. But now, for the first time, you're designing a house for yourself. You have to learn your own aesthetic preferences, understand your own lifestyle needs, envision your own dream of home. This is exactly what you're doing now. The narcissist was your primary client for so long that you became expert at creating a life that served their project. You knew how to be the person who made them feel important, powerful, desired, or whatever they needed. You arranged your schedule around their needs, your social life around their preferences, your goals around their approval. Now you're learning to become the architect of your own existence. And like any architect, you need both vision and practical skills. You need to imagine what kind of life you want to create, but you also need to know how to build it, step by step, choice by choice. Your project of self isn't about becoming someone completely different. It's about consciously choosing the values, relationships, activities, and goals that reflect your authentic preferences, rather than internalized scripts from others. Here are some questions that can help you start identifying your authentic project. When you're completely alone and no one is watching, what activities make you lose track of time? What kinds of conversations energize you rather than drain you? What accomplishments feel meaningful to you, not because they impress others, but because they reflect something you genuinely care about. Maybe you discover that you love creating things with your hands, but you've been pursuing intellectual achievements because that's what impressed them. Perhaps you realize that you're energized by helping individuals, but you've been forcing yourself into leadership roles because they convinced you that's what success looks like. Or you might find that you prefer deep, quiet friendships, but you've been trying to be socially popular because that's what they valued. Now, I know this has been a lot to take in. Sartre's insights can feel overwhelming at first because they're so much deeper than what we usually hear about recovery. But this depth is exactly what's going to set you free. Are you ready to learn how? Here's what makes this practical. Your project of self starts with tiny choices, but it's guided by larger questions about meaning and purpose. What kind of person do you want to become? What kind of impact do you want to have? What kind of life would feel worth living? Not because it looks good from the outside, but because it feels authentic from the inside. These aren't questions you answer once and then follow like a blueprint. Your project of self evolves as you make more authentic choices and discover more about who you're becoming. The point is to start consciously creating your existence instead of living according to default scripts. The beautiful thing about Sartre's approach is that it's never too late to start. No matter how long you lived in bad faith, no matter how deeply the narcissist's scripts are embedded in your psyche, you can begin authentic self-creation right now. Because existence precedes essence, your past doesn't determine your future. Your choices determine who you become. And here's something that might surprise you. The fact that you survived narcissistic abuse and came out the other side searching for authentic existence means you're already stronger and more resilient than most people ever need to be. You've already proven that you can survive having your reality systematically distorted. Now you get to prove that you can consciously create a reality that's genuinely yours. Now, let's make this immediately actionable. Sartre's philosophy becomes powerful when it's translated into specific practices. Here are 3 micro-specific steps you can begin today. Step 1. Every evening for the next week, ask yourself this exact question. What choices did I make today based on what I genuinely wanted? And what choices did I make based on what I thought I should want? Tomorrow morning, when you're choosing what to have for breakfast, pause and ask, what do I actually want to eat right now? Not what's healthy, not what you usually have, not what someone else would approve of. What do you want? Then choose that, even if it feels strange or anxiety-provoking. If you want ice cream for breakfast and you're an adult with no dietary restrictions, eat the ice cream. Notice what it feels like to choose based purely on authentic preference. Here's another micro example. When someone asks what you want to watch on TV tonight, instead of immediately saying, I don't care, you choose, pause for 10 seconds and ask yourself what you would genuinely enjoy watching. Then suggest that, even if you feel nervous about expressing a preference. The key is noticing the difference between authentic desire and internalized scripts. Don't try to make perfect authentic choices yet. Just become conscious of when you're choosing authentically versus when you're following someone else's program. This awareness is the foundation of everything else. You might discover that you have authentic preferences about things you thought you didn't care about. Maybe you realize you actually hate crowded restaurants, but you've been agreeing to them because you thought you should be more social. Perhaps you notice that you love quiet mornings, but you've been filling them with productivity because you thought empty time was wasteful. Step 2. When you feel overwhelmed by choices or paralyzed by freedom, instead of trying to eliminate the anxiety, try this. Take 3 deep breaths and say out loud, this anxiety is my freedom. I'm feeling the weight of authentic choice. Next time you're standing in a store unable to decide between 2 options, notice the anxiety. Instead of rushing to escape it or asking someone else to decide, breathe into it and remind yourself, this discomfort means I'm taking my choices seriously. I'm practicing authentic existence. Then make a choice based on genuine preference, not on eliminating anxiety. When you're invited to social events and feel that familiar panic about whether you want to go, instead of immediately saying yes to avoid the discomfort of deciding, sit with the anxiety for 60 seconds. Tell yourself, this is what freedom feels like. I get to choose what kind of evening I want to have. Then make a choice based on what would genuinely serve your well-being, not what would avoid social discomfort. The goal isn't to become comfortable with freedom. Sartre believed that authentic existence always involves some anguish. The goal is to recognize that this anxiety is the sensation of becoming real. Don't try to escape the feeling of freedom. Learn to interpret it correctly. You might notice that the anxiety of authentic choice feels completely different from the anxiety you felt during the abusive relationship. That was the anxiety of never knowing what was safe. This is the anxiety of being responsible for your own existence. Learning to distinguish between these two types of anxiety is crucial for your... Step 3. Before you go to bed tonight, complete this sentence in writing. I exist in order to... and finish it with something that reflects your authentic values and desires, not what you think sounds good or what others would approve of. Maybe you write, I exist in order to create beautiful spaces that make people feel peaceful. Or, I exist in order to understand how stories can heal people. Or, I exist in order to experience and share genuine connection. Don't worry about whether it's profound or career-related. Focus on what feels authentically true for you right now. Here are some additional micro-examples. I exist in order to help animals live with dignity. Or, I exist in order to make people laugh when they're having hard days. Or, I exist in order to preserve family recipes and traditions. Or, I exist in order to solve problems that frustrate people. This isn't about finding your life purpose forever. This is about practicing the skill of conscious self-definition. Your project of self will evolve as you make more authentic choices. The point is to start consciously creating your existence instead of living according to default scripts. Try this advanced version. Write 3 different completions of I exist in order to. Notice which one feels most authentic, which one feels like it comes from internalized expectations, and which one surprises you. This exercise helps you distinguish between authentic purpose and conditioned purpose. Start today by choosing one breakfast item based purely on what you want. When you feel choice anxiety this week, practice breathing into it instead of escaping it. Before bed tonight, write your existential project statement and read it again tomorrow morning. This week, practice recognizing the difference between authentic desire and internalized shoulds in at least 3 small decisions per day. Notice which choices energize you and which ones deplete you. Over the next month, notice how small authentic choices build your capacity for larger authentic choices. Pay attention to how your relationship with freedom evolves from terror to discomfort to curiosity. This is how you reconstruct existence from the ground up, not through grand gestures, but through accumulating moments of authentic choice until they become your new way of being. So, what did Sartre teach us about rebuilding life after narcissistic abuse? 3 revolutionary insights that change everything. First, the narcissist didn't just damage your self-esteem. They systematically trained you out of authentic existence and into what Sartre calls bad faith. You learned to live according to their script instead of your own genuine choices. They didn't just hurt you, they taught you to disappear yourself. This goes much deeper than trauma. It's an existential problem that requires an existential solution. Understanding this means you stop trying to heal back to who you were and start creating who you authentically are. Second, you are radically free to recreate yourself starting right now. Not free to become who you were before. That person may have been living inauthentically too. You're free to consciously create an authentic existence, perhaps for the first time in your life. The anxiety you feel when facing this freedom isn't pathology. It's the natural sensation of becoming real. Every moment you spend living according to their old script is a choice you're making. Every moment you can choose differently. And most importantly, you don't have a predetermined authentic self waiting to be discovered. Instead, you create who you are through the choices you make and actions you take. This means every moment is an opportunity for authentic self-creation, regardless of your past. You are both the sculptor and the marble, the architect and the building. Every authentic choice is an act of self-creation. This is why Sartre's approach succeeds where conventional recovery often falls short. While traditional therapy focuses on healing from what happened to you, existential philosophy focuses on consciously creating who you're becoming. While psychology tries to restore your previous self, existentialism helps you construct an authentic self. While most recovery methods ask, "How do I get over this?" Sartre's method asks, "Who do I choose to become?" When you apply Sartre's insights to narcissistic abuse recovery, you don't just heal from what happened, you gain the philosophical tools to consciously design an authentic life. You move from being a victim recovering from damage to being an artist creating your own existence. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What do I want to create?" And that shift changes everything. The beautiful paradox of Sartre's philosophy is that the very experience that made you feel most powerless, narcissistic abuse, can become the catalyst for the most powerful thing a human being can do: consciously create an authentic existence. Your survival itself is proof that you're stronger than you know. Now you get to discover what you can build with that strength. If Sartre's insights into authentic existence after narcissistic abuse resonated with you, subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community of philosophical healers who understand that recovery isn't just about feeling better, it's about becoming authentically real. Tell me in the comments, which of Sartre's insights hit you the hardest? Recognizing bad faith in your daily choices, embracing the anxiety of radical freedom, or understanding that you create your essence through existence? And what aspect of existential self-creation would you like me to explore next? Your authentic voice matters here, and this community exists to support your journey back to reality.